Today I am making refrigerator pie, and I'm doing vegetarian, so I'm using frozen broccoli and cheese. And a refrigerator pie is basically eggs, milk, cheese, and whatever vegetable and meat you want to put in there. I don't like all the stalks on frozen broccoli, so my first step is that I'm just cutting it up and getting it ready to rinse it a little bit. If I don't rinse the broccoli before I put it in my pie, it makes my pie too soggy. So my first step is to work through all this broccoli, get it all cut up, and rinse it off. Okay, I've rinsed my broccoli, and now I'm just, I cut it up, and now I just put a little bit of cold water in there and to get all the ice off. And what I'll do is I'll actually let it sit for a few minutes and drain off any extra water. The more water in my broccoli, the more soggy it will be. I wanted to show you one of the ways that I've reduced the pollution that our household produces, and also our exposure to caking agents and everything else. I bought one of these plastic containers that's made for blocks of cheese, and then we buy our blocks of cheese and we shred it ourselves. That way we know they're not putting any anti-caking agents like sawdust in our cheese. And granted, optimal would be cheese that's made from non-pasteurized milk. However, it's hard to find, and when you do find it, it's quite expensive. So we do go for the sharp cheddar. I prefer this brand, although frankly I'll buy whatever brand is on sale, as long as it doesn't list anything strange in the ingredients. And sharp cheddar does reduce the amount because it processes longer. You don't get as much lactose in a sharp cheddar as you do a softer cheese. Okay, I have all of my different food that I'm going to be putting into this refrigerator pie ready to go. If I was adding meat, I would also have some cut up meat. I usually will do Canadian bacon, or actually sometimes fried bacon that I'm sorry, it's not fried, it's baked bacon. Today though, I'm just doing broccoli and cheese. So my next step is to get together all of my egg, and I like to use the container that came for my stick mixer to do this in. If I accidentally get shell in my egg, then I'll go back and I'll filter it out, but I try to be as careful as I can, not to say that it doesn't happen sometimes. And now I'm going to stick mix it. In my recipe book it says not to over mix your eggs because you can get a shiny on the surface of your eggs. However, that doesn't really count when you're working on doing a refrigerator pie. So I'm going to go ahead and add my milk, and I've pre-measured it. I like to add a little bit more than the recipe calls for of nutmeg. I found that the nutmeg really adds a nice flavor, and people always ask me what did I do to make my refrigerator pie taste so good, and the secret is, truthfully, it's the nutmeg. I add a little bit of salt, and then I also need a little bit of cayenne pepper. The recipe calls for a quarter teaspoon of cayenne pepper, but I found that's just a little bit too hot for me, so I actually put that in half, and then you can add pepper later after it's cooked. More stick blending to get it all mixed up real good. And then I start assembling the refrigerator pie. So I already have a pie shell that I have pre-baked. I only baked it for about 10 minutes. It starts cracking, but oh well, I'm not going to spend the money on the beads. I looked it up, and I don't want to take a chance of adding bean flavor to my pie crust, so I just pre-bake it and let it go how it's going to go. The first layer I put in is actually some Parmesan cheese. I found that it keeps the bottom of the crust from getting soggy. Even though I pre-baked the crust, it seems like it'll still get soggy if I don't put a layer of something down there first. Next, I'm going to add my broccoli that I've already washed, and I'm going to drain it one last time before I add it in. Okay, I've added my broccoli in, and now I'm just going to put some cheese on top. I don't put as much of the cheddar on top as I did the Parmesan underneath. And you'll see one of the reasons why I like to mix my eggs in that container, that pour container, is it's going to be a whole lot easier to assemble when I go to put it in the oven. Okay, this is why I like to put this in the pour. Is all I do is get the camera. All I do is just pour it in here after I've set it on the shelf, because I'm notorious for spilling it everywhere if I pre-pour it into my pie shell before I put it in the oven. And now it's already in the oven, and all I need to do is slide the door shut, and I'm good. So that bakes for 45 minutes. Then I'll pull it out of the oven. It needs to rest for 15 minutes before we cut it. Okay, the refrigerator pie has baked for 45 minutes at 350 degrees, and I've taken it out of the oven. It needs to sit for 15 minutes before we can cut it, and I'll show you what it looks like after I cut it. And there you have it. Easy peasy refrigerator pie. Extremely nutritional and fairly easy to make.